what's the major difference between being a prosecutor and criminal defense?
The prosecutor, well, you're supposed to make sure that justice is served, but
What's the worst part for you, and then what's the worst part for the people that you're defending?
the worst part for them is that
Cop can always search your license plate and see if you have warrants and things like that, right? And they can pull you over if they do have an active warrant.
If I refuse the search, then what?
they have the right to detain you for a little bit of time if they want to bring a drug dog and to go on the outside of the car.
Do you have a certain tactic that you like to use to help people defend their right?
It just depends on the actual case.
Hey, we have a special guest today. We wanted to have another conversation podcast with you all, but to include one of our attorneys from our law office, O'Brien Fagan. So we have here Miss Haley Knighton. Thank you
Hello.
for joining us. I'm so excited. So just to kind of give you a little bit of background, she does practice family law and criminal defense for our firm. And since we've been talking a lot about criminal defense cases in the past couple episodes, I thought it'd be interesting to bring one of our attorneys on our podcast and ask questions about her life, her experience as an attorney. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that people want to know when you get stuck in a traffic ticket like somebody did the other day. So again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yay! So just to kind of give us an introduction of who you are, I know I kind of already said like what you do for us, but from what I understand, I don't know if this was like early on, but you've done prosecution
Yes.
and now you take on criminal defense cases now, but how did you start your career? What made you want to become an attorney?
Kind of always wanted to be an attorney. Ever since I was little, it was that or marine biology.
Oh, cool.
And then went to law school in San Antonio at St. Mary's. And I wanted to prosecute. I knew I wanted to prosecute when I went to law school. So got my first job in Galveston at the DA's office.
Mhm.
Was there almost 5 years, and then decided I wanted to change, so went and did criminal defense.
Nice. Do you have a preference? Like, what's the major difference between being a prosecutor and criminal defense?
The prosecutor, well, you're supposed to make sure that justice is served, but you're just trying to, I guess, make everybody safe. Criminal defense, you're really trying to help the actual person that's charged with a crime and making sure that their rights weren't violated. So.
Okay. Prosecution. I don't think I've ever told you like off camera, but
She's been prosecuted before.
no. But I went to Sam Houston State. I got my bachelor in criminal justice, and I wanted to become a prosecutor. And the only reason why, because as growing up, I read this comic book. It's called Case Closed. It's about this little boy who becomes this little mini investigator, and he solves crimes. And I always thought that was so intriguing, and I wanted to put those bad guys away. And I always thought the defense attorney, like, man, like how do you internalize the thought of defending somebody who's done something wrong, that maybe hurt somebody, or I just can't wrap my head around being on that side. Like, do you juggle?
So-
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
In the beginning, I did.
Yeah.
And there's still some types of cases that I juggle with. But most of them, you just have to look at it like they deserve a defense. No matter what they've been charged with, whether guilty or not guilty, they have the right to have a defense.
right. Do you have a certain tactics that you like to use to help people defend their rights?
It just depends on the actual case.
Okay.
Every case is different. Every person's different.
Right.
So, some things that would work with one person won't work with another. Their personalities do come into it too.
So do you have any like favorite cases that you've worked on so far?
I've tried murder cases. I've tried both on prosecution and defense side.
Okay. Wow.
Um,
Defense too.
mhm.
How did that go?
The actual first one I tried, we got a not guilty on, so that was fun.
Wow. Interesting.
And talking to the jury after cases is always interesting. Seeing kind of their points of view or why they thought this and why they thought that. Some of them are very open. I know some of them, the murder case I tried that we got a not guilty on, it was a drug-related offense. So
Okay.
the jurors were like, well, they were all on drugs.
Oh.
So it's just everybody comes in with different bias and beliefs and everything. So
Okay.
Was there like any cases that were super fulfilling Like one that you were like, that felt good.
There were a couple, the ones that you honestly believe your client is innocent. If you get a not guilty on those or get those are dismissed, those are very fulfilling. Because, there's quite a few innocent people still in prison. So,
How do you feel about even people, like, let's say they do find it guilty, but in your heart, like, maybe they're innocent? How do you feel? And maybe for people who actually did do it and they feel like the justice has been served, just, serving their time. How do you feel about, I guess, the recidivism? How do you say it? What's that word?
Reciprocation?
No.
recidivism.
Yes. So because I'm such a big advocate, even when I was studying criminal justice too, where I just feel like people who are criminals, they need a lot. Like, yes, serving time is justice for certain people, but for the criminals itself, like, the hope is to get them back into the reality, and get them back into the civil life and become a good citizen. So how do you feel about that? Do you have opinions?
Yeah, I don't think our system's really geared to rehabilitate people. It's more for punishment.
Right.
Drugs are huge. Same thing with alcohol. And a lot of crimes happen because of drugs or alcohol. And so if you don't ever treat the underlying problem, then they're going to come out and get in trouble again. Because, alcohol and drugs are available in prison. So it's not like they would ever just completely come off.
So do you push your clients, if, let's say, drugs and alcohol were involved, and if you know for a fact that, okay, they did the crime, do you push for the jury to hear, or maybe even the judge to give them less time because, okay, they need to get clean, like, be a little bit more, less harsh?
Yeah, it goes a lot into it. You want to bring out, it's called mitigation. So you want to bring out what's occurred in their past. Do they have this drug problem? Were they abused as a child? Just lots of things go into it. And then you request less time. We don't have the rehab facilities to send people to for the criminal side of things.
Right.
So,
Okay. Nice. So Cody here, do you want to
Okay, I
talk about
guess
your
this would be the
hit stick?
time to bring it up. Like last week on like Monday or Tuesday, I don't know, was it last week?
Yeah, I think so.
Like last week, I was on the way to work and I got pulled over right after I left my apartments. Um, he pulled me over for my registration. That's what he told me. But so I got really anxious, being pulled over and stuff. And, he had a partner that I didn't even know was there, just creeping up in the back, right in my car and etc. So, he was like, yeah, I pulled you over for your registration. Can I get your license and, um, insurance? So I like was trying to hand it to him, but I was having like an anxiety attack. So I was like shaking a little bit. And after that, he basically just started asking, like, where am I heading to? Where did I come from? The address that I just came from is the same one that's on my license, etc. Am I on cocaine and all this other crazy drugs, psychedelic? Like, he asked me all those, and then he asked me to search the vehicle. And, I mean, what am I supposed to do in that situation? Can I say no, or is he going to take me to jail if I say no? Like, what am I supposed to, like, I didn't know what to do. So I was like, I mean, I guess, like, if that's what, like, I don't know what the reasoning, because I'm nervous, because I'm shaking. They're going to search my car. Like, you're going to search everything. And so, I got out the car. Made me put the hands on the hood, and they searched me. And then he went on and searched literally every single crevice in that car. And what she was saying is that I could refuse the search. And I didn't know if I could refuse the search because, I mean, is that probable cause? There's like probable cause, and then there's another one that I forget what it's called. Reasonable suspicion. So it's like, is that enough for reasonable suspicion because I'm shaking? If I voice and communicate like, hey, like, I'm just having an anxiety attack, like, I just been stressed
so
out.
no, you can always tell them no.
Mhm.
You always have the right to refuse a search.
Mhm.
I personally always tell everybody never consent to a search.
Mhm.
And then you have the people that say, well, I don't have anything on me. Well, I get that. I don't either, but I'm not going to let an officer get in my car.
Right.
There's nothing in there, but I still don't want you going through my stuff. It's my stuff.
Yeah.
But just being nervous wouldn't give them reasonable suspicion to search.
So what's the difference? What's the
So, real quick, if I refuse to search, then what? It's just okay. Well, go on about your day.
Yeah, I mean they have the right to detain you for a little bit of time if they want to bring a drug dog and to go on the outside of the car. But unless they have some reason to believe there are drugs in the car, like they smell, marijuana or smell alcohol,
Or
then they
see.
don't correct or see something, then they don't have a right to go into your car.
Yeah. But then it's like if I refuse, then I have to sit here and wait for the dog, wait for another patrol.
It depends on the cop.
I mean, he searched through my whole thing and just gave me a verbal warning. Probably because he searched my whole entire
Right.
car and found nothing. So now it's like, okay, I just put this kid through all of this just for nothing. So I think that's why he gave me a verbal warning.
Probably.
But yeah, it was really nerve-wracking. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, y'all treating me like I'm some freaking crackhead, dude. This is the Woodlands. Like, it's the Woodlands. I'm going to work.
Those people with money got the money for the stuff too, though.
Yeah, but they also have the places to do all their stuff in their own privacy. It's like I'm driving to work.
9 a.m.
Yeah, it was like 9:30. I'm
bump.
like, dude, I'm late for these meetings. Y'all are stressing me out. Then you want me to search. And then I put my hands on them in my pockets out of comfort, just like out of nothing. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I'm like, dude, what the y'all just searched me. What could I possibly be reaching?
Right. It just depends on the officer. Some will, some won't, with regards to the drug dogs coming out. But
what's the main difference? Like, I get probable cause, right? Like you said, like if he, saw something in the plain sight to be like, okay, there's a crack pipe, okay, let me search. But what's the reasonable suspicion?
so it's just a little bit lower.
Okay.
Like you see somebody kind of weaving in their lane. Well, they may have reasonable suspicion to think you might be intoxicated. So they pull you over and they approach, and then you smell like alcohol. Well, now they got probable cause.
Okay.
So it's just what they need essentially to pull you over. They need probable cause to actually arrest you.
Reasonable suspicion happens whenever they're pulling you over. And then that's why they can approach it directly to, they smell alcohol and they can ask those questions because now they have reasonable suspicion. But in my case, he didn't because he just ran the registration.
Right.
Okay.
So I have a question, and we get these calls a lot to where, and from my understanding, cop can always search your license plate and see if you have warrants and things like that, right? And they can pull you over if they do have an active warrant. I get people call all the time about, oh yeah, I have a warrant for this and I don't know what to do, but I'm not willing to turn myself in. What do they do at that point? How would you, what can they do?
Like the person?
Yeah.
I mean, at some point you're probably going to get caught.
Yeah.
Some counties you're allowed to do walkthroughs. If they don't want to turn themselves in.
What is that walkthrough?
It's where you go in with the attorney, you already have a bonding company, and you just do a walkthrough. So you don't have to spend the entire 24, 48 hours in jail. It's quicker.
Wait, so when you turn yourself in, you will spend a night in jail automatically?
So if you go, like, say you have a warrant and you go up to the police station and turn yourself in on the warrant, then they have to process you in. You have to wait to see a judge.
Oh, you do have to do that.
Yeah.
So even if it's at night, then they'll have to stay through the night.
Right.
But if you have an attorney,
you can do what's called a walkthrough. And that's not in every county. Just some counties allow it, some don't. Montgomery is one that usually does not allow walkthroughs.
Interesting. How do they make those decisions by county? Just
up to the judges.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Dang, I didn't even know about
a walkthrough is just like a shorter visit to jail then.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. Even with traffic tickets, you would have to get processed too?
Yeah.
If your warrants or traffic
warrants,
tickets?
yeah.
Dang.
That's crazy. I've heard so many people be like, yeah, I haven't paid my ticket. I'm like, y'all are gambling with your life. Why?
I know. And you can get your license suspended, right?
Mm-hmm.
Golly, so tell me this, with warrants. So for example, back to the people that call. This one lady in particular, she called in, she had a warrant for domestic violence, but she was not the one that caused the violence. She was just there at the time between two people who had an altercation, but she was like a witness. So then they put like there's a word, something know what I'm talking about? They put a warrant on her, but then she left. She fled. Well, she didn't like leave, but they didn't put any charges against her. But now she has a warrant for that incident.
That's weird. So I know, unless they're charging her, she wouldn't have a typical warrant unless she's being charged with a crime. Now, if they had a trial and say she was subpoenaed as a witness and didn't show up, the judge can issue a capias, which is similar to a warrant, and have the sheriff go pick her up. And then she would sit in jail until she testified.
So what if you get subpoenaed and you don't want to go in front of the judge? That's a punishment too?
The subpoena is telling you to appear. It's in order to appear and to give testimony. Some people don't, but there is that option that the judge can always send the deputy to come pick you up.
What if there's a situation where like they need to be, they got subpoenaed for something that, you know, is charges against the other person, but they feel uncomfortable and they don't want to go be near that person? Then does it get like...
No, so it's essentially the same. They would just talk to the prosecutor, you know, because usually in that situation, they're either a witness or they're the actual victim. So then they would just tell them that they don't feel comfortable, but the person charged has the right to confront their witnesses. So they'll be in the courtroom, but they'll be testifying from the stand. So it's not like they'll be next to them when there's deputies there. So
that's weird. I knew somebody that got subpoenaed, but they didn't have to go like to the court. I guess it wasn't the I think it was like a trial. And then there's the like punishment. What's it called whenever they get the punishment? Like it's two separate things.
It's just the punishment phase. Yeah, sentencing, punishment phase.
Yeah, so sentencing, so they got subpoenaed to be there, but they obviously didn't go because they didn't feel like, you know, being over there and like having to deal with that situation and stuff. And the person still like it went through, and then now it's like on the sentencing side of things. So they just don't get to. Do they get like a way out, or like they don't have to go?
So usually it's either the prosecutor or the defense that subpoenas people, and then there's a number on there to call, you know, and if you just call, and you know, when I prosecuted, depended on who the witness was, you know, and their reasons for not wanting to come.
What if the witness was the victim?
There's ways. I mean, normally at that case, you would just end up dismissing the case as a prosecutor, unless you have like photos or other evidence you can put on without the victim, because it happens every day that they don't show up.
Right. Okay, that's interesting.
So I want to get into like the trial side of things. I think one time, I overheard you and Jacob talk about one of the cases that y'all have to go through like footage, like hours and hours of footage. Is that the worst part of preparing for trial, or what's like the worst part?
It depends on the footage.
What's the worst part for you, and then what's the worst part for the people that you're defending?
The worst part for them is the actual trial. I think they're more nervous sitting there because defending them, I usually don't like to put my clients on the stand. It is
why is that?
Because the prosecutor can twist their words. And if they have a past, then all their past comes in and the jury hears about their priors. And
I've been watching a lot of Suits recently. They do that. Cross-examining, right?
Yes.
See? Don't put me in the courtroom. Yeah, that's crazy. I've been watching a lot of Suits, so that's the only reason why I know what that is.
But it depends. I mean, I like watching footage. It depends on what it is, though. You know, some videos are funny. Sure. Some, you know, there's just some things you wish you could never see, and you can't unsee once you've seen. So I think that's probably the worst part. It's depending on the case and what you see.
Yeah. And then like the evidence share, right? Because like the prosecution have to share their evidence of what they got, and you have to share your side. At what point does that happen between?
So the defense never has to give the prosecution anything.
Oh, really?
It's just the state has to send over all the evidence they have.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You have some you can choose if you want to share it or just hold it until trial.
Interesting.
Unless you're using an expert, then you have to provide them notice of the experts. But you don't have to tell them who your witnesses are or anything like that.
Really?
Yeah, I learned it in Suits.
I did not know that. I always thought you had to share both sides.
They always like hold like a secret weapon until like trial. And then they get to trial and the secret weapon's like, oh, we can't use this. Or they had something, a counter. And then that's
Have you had that experience to where like you didn't either way you didn't expect the defense to bring up an evidence as a prosecution side, or the opposite, as a defense, like, oh, I got this.
Both.
Do you have an example?
Well, I know when I first started defending, it's called Brady evidence. It's what the prosecutor has to disclose if there's something that's favorable to your client. Mm-hmm. And so I knew there was something out there that could possibly be favorable, but the prosecution wouldn't disclose it. And so once we finally got it, after having to go through the judge and everybody getting in trouble by the judge, then they actually disclosed it and they dismissed the case.
Ah.
So there are times, like from the prosecutor's standpoint, that they may not know about this other person that was there. Nobody's told them about them. And then they come in and they tell this whole completely different story, but they're more believable.
Mm.
So that sucks as a prosecutor.
Yeah. Interesting. When you said, what is it? Brady, what?
Brady evidence.
Brady evidence. That reminded me of a story.
Brady Bunch. No?
Adnan Syed, he's a guy from Boston. I don't know if you're familiar with that case, but he was actually, what's that word when you get out of jail?
Free.
Released.
Nah.
Oh my God, because you have to ask.
Renewed, reborn.
Oh my God, you have to ask for permission to re-exonerate it. No, exonerate it. No, golly.
Reinvest.
Anyways. So he asked for his trial to, he was convicted guilty of a murder. I think it was like his ex-girlfriend or something like that. That he was convicted like 20 something years ago. And this one particular, like, I guess his family has always been trying to help him to get him out of prison, even though I think he got sentenced. I don't know if it's life, but really, really long years. And I think he's already been spent like over 10 years in prison. So he found a defense attorney, like Innocence Project.
Like reevaluated?
You back to that? No. So have you had those instances, cases to where they've already spent time, but you're trying to help them bring up the trial again?
I haven't. I know they're like the Innocence Project, they're appellate lawyers. Mm-hmm. So they do the appellate work. And then, of course, some of them go in and will retry it if they get a retrial. A lot of those are they find evidence that wasn't there, or available, like DNA from back in the day. You didn't have it. And then it gets ran and it shows clearly not the person that's in jail. So then they'll get them released. Mm-hmm. But I haven't personally had one. I don't handle appellate work. So
it's a completely different like sector, I guess. Okay. Interesting. Is there, let's say, I don't know, and laws change every so often. Is there a particular, I guess, shift in laws to where you kind of had to rework how you defend people? Like maybe new drug laws or just any kind of like, I don't know, human rights?
Updates to the
right
to the law to where you have to actually adjust your strategy.
Mm-hmm.
There are some. Back in the day, you could get, if someone's convicted of murder, they could get probation.
Really?
Well, now that's no longer a thing. And I think it changed about 10 or so years ago that now people convicted of actual murder can't get probation.
Wow.
So before, you could always ask for probation. Say it was a person that, committed murder and never been in trouble. You could ask for that before.
It's probably a good thing, no?
It depends.
Is that by state or is that federal?
I know that's Texas law.
Oh, that's Texas.
I don't want murderers out on probation.
Well, it depends on why they were charged with murder.
How do you feel about that? Do you like that change?
No.
Really?
It depends on the case. I mean, there are certain cases, where if it's first degree murder and it's premeditated, well, clearly they probably shouldn't be out. But, if it was something that...
Like accidental?
Oh.
Right. Where if they, say the state refused to do manslaughter or anything like that, well, we'll give them probation on this. Well, now that's not a thing. Now they would have to offer the manslaughter or reckless homicide.
What about self-defense? I think there was a recent case that I've read. God,
I've always been curious about that.
I like the stand your ground laws and stuff. But what's the gray area with the stand your ground laws?